Good afternoon, CannaSphere family. For those of you who are joining us live, welcome to another exciting episode of CannaSphere Africa, where we bring you all the latest news and happenings around the African content in the rapidly expanding, exploding cannabis industry. What we also do is we cover some stuff from international, just to make sure that we have some context about what is going on. We've got lots lined up for today. It is episode 37. We're going for 37 episodes every Tuesday. If you're re-watching this, thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe for this every Tuesday. You can watch it after work and whenever you like. This month has been brought to you by the good people at Green Smoke Room Seeds. They're a fantastic South African genetics company. So please check out their website and support them, support local. Let's build this industry together. We've got lots coming up today. Linda, do you want to give us the quick headlines?
Yes, I do.
Where are you? Where are you?
Hello.
There you are. Hello. How's it?
I'm good.
Right. What's happening in the world of cannabis?
I'm feeling so tall.
You're looking tall, actually.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I grew over this weekend.
Grew, huh?
Yes.
All that weed, bro.
All that sunlight.
Huh?
Yes, indeed. Yes, so today we're going to be talking about the president promises to support the traditional cannabis growers.
I hope so.
High Court says Air Force cannabis case is a military matter. So someone was high on the supply.
High Court, high. Yeah.
Police bust illegal hydroponic grow up in Stellenbosch and arrest 3 people.
Naughty.
And then Lesotho cannabis company to benefit from a NASDAQ listing.
Lots going on. We've also got Noxy, who's going to talk about falling asleep after smoking. Do you fall asleep after smoking?
Never.
Or feeling sleepy? Never.
I was ready for the day and I seized it.
Good, seize the day. I like it. So Jeff is going to talk about deep water culture, and how's this? In Thailand, they just gave away 1 million cannabis plants to their people. 1 million! Can you imagine?
What's the strain, man?
What's the strain? All I know is it's a strategy, a very good strategy. So I'm excited to hear about that from Jeff. Dr. Gallo talks cannabis and is it safe? And Cuban is going to discuss one of my favorite topics, companion planting. So lots coming up. But without further ado, thanks, Linda. Let's cross over to Limpopo province, which I had the privilege of visiting a few days ago. So thank you, Brett. We'll chat afterwards. But over to you in the highlands of Limpopo with the news.
Greetings from the CannaSphere news desk in Limpopo, where the rainy season is going on far longer than normal and there is wet, weak sunlight on the mountains. President Cyril Ramaphosa says traditional growers must not be left behind in the country's development of a commercial framework for cannabis. Speaking to ANC leaders of the Eastern Cape last week, the president said the province needed to be united in order to attract investment. He said during his closing remarks at the party's conference, and I quote, "We must ensure that commercialization does not disadvantage small and subsistence growers of cannabis, and the government will put in place mechanisms to support and protect them." Meanwhile, the Eastern Cape has now included unlicensed cannabis farmers as potential beneficiaries of flood relief. Masiza Mazizi, spokesman for the Department of Rural Development and Agrarian Reform, said the early April floods had hit several cannabis production areas. Mazizi said the department had deployed a technical team to support members of the Provincial Disaster Management Centre. And the technical team reported that in Port St. John's alone, the damage to cannabis crops was estimated at 800,000 rand. The third period for public comment on the Cannabis for Private Purposes Bill closed on 13 May, with 2,378 submissions made via the public participation platform, the Dear South Africa website. Lawyer Andrew McPherson says the main problem with the bill in its current form is that it discriminates against people who do not have access to private property and therefore are not legally entitled to grow cannabis. There are also issues around special dispensations for rusters and not for traditional healers or growers. The bill is already entirely different from its original form, which was designed specifically to prevent the commercial trade in cannabis. It now has a new section that will enable future legislation to legalize the buying and selling of cannabis products. It also makes allowance for the purchase of prescription cannabis under the Section 21 medical cannabis schemes that are currently being piloted. Once state lawyers have made their adjustments to the bill, it will come before the National Council of Provinces to be ratified into law. The North Gauteng High Court has struck off a roll an application by 4 Air Force cadets to be reinstated on a military skills development program after they were dismissed on cannabis charges. Judge Elmarie van der Schyff said in the Pretoria Court on 9 May that the matter was one that should be dealt with internally by the military. The 4 unnamed men had sought an order declaring the Department of Defence's decision to terminate their service with the SA Air Force as unlawful. This was after they tested positive for cannabis at Swartkop Air Force Base, which they acknowledged, but said they had consumed it legally and in the privacy of their own homes while off duty. The Western Cape continues its clampdown on illegal cannabis grow operations. The latest to be bust is a hydroponic grow op in Mount Albert Road, Lochaline in Stellenbosch last week. According to police, 3 suspects were arrested, 2 foreign nationals aged 25 and 31, and a 33-year-old South African who are due to appear soon in the Stellenbosch Magistrates Court. Police say they went to the house after a tip-off and found a hydroponic grow up with 284 plants, 53 LED lights, 8 fans, 9.5 litres of probiotics and microlife, and 31 plastic bags of cannabis, and 1 round of ammunition. This is the 3rd large bust in the Western Cape in the last month after 1 year series and another in the Klein-Drakenstein Mountains. Nabat Africa is to raise 18 million euros from select European investors. That's over 300 million rand. The listed company is listed on both Frankfurt and the JSE. Nabat's been looking at acquiring assets and has gone into a deal with the CSIR to upgrade its Kucha facility in the Eastern Cape to process cannabis and hemp. And it's understood that much of the money raised in Europe will be spent on this project. And we're going to have an Africa Spotlight in the news from now onwards. In Africa Spotlight this week, we've got Lesotho. Also business news. Lesotho cannabis company Bophelo Bioscience and Wellness will be the main beneficiary of its parent company's listing on the Nasdaq, the American Stock Exchange. In March, Akanda raised $16 million by taking its shares public. CEO Tej Verk says most of the money will be spent in Lesotho to upgrade Bophelo's facility. The company has a license for 200 hectares. It currently only has 3 hectares under cultivation. It is supplying Akanda's sister company Medican in the UK and also has a deal to get cannabis flower into Germany through importer Cantourage. That's it from the news desk in Limpopo. Back to you, Trenton.
Yeah, it's a lot going on, you know. I feel hot and cold and mixed emotions about all these busts that are happening, because on the one hand, I'm like, well, guys, if you're not going to do it properly, then you deserve it. But on the other hand, the barriers to entry are so ridiculously high and only for the wealthy. I'm like, well, what do you expect? People need to eat. I don't know how you feel about it.
Well, I think it's a difficult situation because government is trying to recognize the reality that we have 3.5 million cannabis consumers, over 800,000 farmers, 350,000 traditional healers who all use cannabis. The demand has to the demand has to be met from a supply from somewhere. And, at the moment, the law prevents you from buying or selling cannabis, and yet so much is being consumed. And once the law allows that, then the people who we're seeing being bust now will be operating entirely legally. So it is like a weird thing, Trenton.
Yeah, I support regulation, and I support the industry sort of, commercializing, and because ultimately it's about protecting the consumer. And in a lot of these backyard grows or these illegal grows, we have no idea what conditions they're growing under. So I think there's a validity in making sure that they are held accountable. But at the same time, as you say, like there are, all the Pondoland farmers that are still growing to put food on the table. Like it's so confusing and complicated at the moment. But I guess the whole thing is that things are improving and are getting better, and the conversation is happening, and that's exciting in itself. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also so interesting that on the one hand, the police are busting illegal cannabis grow ops. On the other hand, the Eastern Cape Department of Agriculture is assessing cannabis crops from unlicensed illegal farms as part of the flood damage compensation that these guys might get. So we are sitting in a very schizophrenic position. Completely. Well, Brett, thanks so much. Listen, also thank you for your hospitality at Kings Walden in Limpopo. If anybody is traveling to the Limpopo region, please check out Kings Walden. It is such a beautiful place. The views are incredible. It was very nice to connect with the Limpopo Massive, the Cannabis Massive, and hopefully we'll be up there in a few weeks again. Thanks. We're going to cross to Noxy now, who's going to talk.
Who's going to talk about feeling sleepy after smoking. And no, I have not smoked cannabis. Over to you, Noxy.
Good afternoon and welcome to the CannaSphere Lifestyle News Desk. And yes, today is about feeling sleepy. Now, there's a reason marijuana is great for those struggling to get a good rest. The plant causes the body to naturally loosen up and relax, which is great if you're looking to get some sleep. But if you're just looking to get high or just relax a bit, fatigue is a side effect you want to avoid. So here are 4 useful tips on how to avoid falling asleep after a sesh. At number 1, change your setting. Go for a walk, start talking to a friend, eat something, preferably with protein to help you shake off the laziness. A walk is particularly helpful for any and all occasions, exposing you to fresh air, new surroundings, and it's something that can be done in almost all situations. At number 2, try stretching. Working out is one of the world's best natural energy boosters, helping you sleep more soundly and decreasing your fatigue. It might be too much to ask of your body to go for a run while on a sleepy high, but some light stretches will do the trick, making you feel more present and helping you get out of your head a little bit. Number 3, which is my absolute favorite, works like a bomb. Take a shower. If you're at home or at a friend's house and you start feeling that powerful marijuana-induced sleep, hop in the shower. This will help you relax and wake up, causing you to feel refreshed and ready to do something different. And at number 4, have coffee or have some tea. Those are always great options when you need a quick burst of energy. Some studies suggest that caffeine can enhance the effects of THC and produce a more pleasurable and effective high. I'm a huge fan of coffee and cannabis, guys. It's an actual thing. You should start slow when mixing these 2 elements together because one is a depressant and the other is a stimulant. Trenton, do you ever feel sleepy after getting high? I know I do. I'm the worst.
Not usually. I find that cannabis makes me a bit hyper. Actually, I guess it obviously depends on what I've consumed. But one thing we also, you should never be mixing energy drinks and cannabis. I think that's a bad combination.
Yeah, that's weird.
I think also when you get sleepy, some of the things you suggested are perfect because cannabis is also a journey. So sometimes you can go through a bit of a sleepy patch, maybe need some fresh air. I think that the trick is not to panic, because sometimes it can knock you out of it. Which is why also the setting is important. Cool.
Definitely.
Thanks so much, Noxy. We'll see you at the end of the show. Next up, we have Jeff, who's going to be talking about deep water culture and my favorite story of this episode. 1 million plants, guys. 1 million. 1 million. Over to you, Jeff.
Today we're going to be talking about deep water culture, which is essentially a hydroponic method where you actually don't grow in a substrate or any media. You actually use what would be known as clay pellets or any other inert substance to keep the plant upright. Essentially, it's the root zone that you're targeting, where what you're doing is supplying nutrient-rich and aerated solution or water to the product, to the actual roots itself. You may use beneficial microorganisms to help the uptake in the roots. The key thing is the aeration and also keeping the pH balance going. Now, there's some clear benefits to deep water culture. Essentially, the ability to obviously do mass hydroponic grows. So the ability, if you can just get the nutrient feed right and buffer the water appropriately, you can feed a whole array of trays and tanks. However, the downside is that you need the plants in the same level of vegetation, the same stage of growing, and if there's contamination, it's going to rapidly spread to all those root zones. So that's one of the benefits and drawbacks you'll see, but deep water culture is definitely an interesting one for hydroponic growers, so we wanted to mention it. Now, getting to the news highlights. The biggest ones are one's positive, one's negative, depending on how you see it. Aurora Sky, Aurora being the second largest capitalized company. You'll see a plane airport in the background. That's why it's called Aurora Sky. But this facility that has 50,000 square meters of cultivation capacity, massive levels of automation, was only ever operating at about 25% of its capacity. Aurora came out last week and announced that they'll be shutting down this facility for good. Major setback for the industry in terms of commercial aspirations, but I think a lot of high consumers realized that there was too much focus on standardization and a very basic product that came out of this facility. That artisanal effort that went into the passion of cultivation, I think they try to scale too much to make a uniform product. And in that process, unless it was all going to go to medical and they had the capacity for global production of medical, they were always going to lose out in that space if they were competing in responsible adult use markets. And now, talking about better access, Thailand, the minister has come out and said starting the 9th of June next month, they will be providing they have a stockpile of 1 million cannabis plants to be given to patients. The thing in Thailand to remember is you still need to be registered with the government to receive this plant. It's supposed to be encouraging home use, primarily the use of it in teas and the rest. I'm a little questioning on the level of THC that will be provided in these plants. We know that extracted products in Thailand can only still contain 0.2% THC. There is probably likely to be a low level of THC. I don't know. We will find out after the 9th of June once a testing lab actually tests the cannabis that the state is providing in Thailand. Back to you, Trenton.
I still think it's an amazing thing to be giving out 1 million plants to your people. That's a real overt statement that, right, guys, cannabis is here to stay. It can be used for medicine. Learn how to grow it. That's certainly one way of bringing the industry online. Can you imagine if they did that here? There'd be guys queuing up waiting for their plants.
No, absolutely. I think the only drawback is having to register. I mean, ideally they should just allow you to, but I think that's maybe just a stage. They won't ever be able to keep track, I think.
No, I agree. Maybe they haven't heard of cloning, but essentially what it's doing is stimulating the market, and also on the Aurora front, it's always sad and disappointing to hear when big companies close down. But I think you're completely right. It was completely overcapitalized. Run by people who are just literally looking at the dollar signs, and I've had cannabis from some of these big Canadian farms, and it's bashed and battered through trimming machines, and it does. I'm not saying that everything has to be boutique and everything has to be sort of small scale, but I think they just took it too far, and we must learn from that. We must learn from the fact that there's a campaign that Fields of Green have, know your Dacha farmer, know where it's coming from. And these big faceless organizations and these big gigantic corporations, just in it to make money, because that's essentially all it's about. I think it's a lesson that we should all learn, and take it into this industry and try and make sure that we've got a nice balance, because ultimately growing cannabis is an art and a science combined. And there is something beautiful in growing cannabis, but when you're doing thousands and thousands and thousands of plants, it completely just becomes factory orientated. And I think there's a balance to be found there. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. You can't they focus on automation and commercialization and uniformity. Now there's benefits to uniformity of product, sure. But when you take the soul out of it and you take the grower out of it, you're going to end up with a result, which is a closure like they experienced.
Yeah. Let's live and learn. Thanks, Jeff. See you next week. Right now, we're going to cross over to Dr. Gallow, who's going to unpack whether cannabis is safe to use. Over to you, Dr. Gallow.
Good afternoon, CannaSphere viewers. I'm Dr. Shiksha Gallow for the medical segments of CannaSphere, live from Dubai today. So the topic is about, is medical cannabis safe? And the reason I want to talk about this today is the stigma attached here in the UAE is really huge, and that's a question every single person has been asking me. So the answer to that is yes, it is extremely safe, because cannabis is actually a safe medicine to use, as it doesn't have any brainstem receptors. So what that means is you can never actually overdose with cannabis, and that's what's great about it. However, it's important to note that the source of the cannabis you get is from a reliable, credible source. It needs to be extracted correctly, it needs to be grown correctly, it needs to be dosed correctly, and those are the things that can affect the safety and efficacy of the medicine. So it's important that you have a doctor that can actually prescribe the medicine to you correctly. So what happens if a person takes too much of cannabis? As I mentioned, they can never overdose, but too much THC in naive users can actually cause psychosis. That is why it's important, we call it microdosing, that we dose for very slow amounts of THC and build the THC levels up in combination with the CBD. What happens if a patient takes too much THC? We normally recommend for them to have an ice shower, for them to have ice cold drinks, for them to have ice cold orange juice, as well as to increase the CBD of that of the medication, so then it can counteract the THC. So guys, that's a wrap up. That's what I want to just let you know. So be safe out there. Make sure you have a COA, certificate of analysis, for your medical products. Make sure you have a doctor who can actually prescribe it to you correctly. And then yes, it's going to be 100% safe. See you next time. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks. That was Dr. Gallo coming to us from Dubai. I just want to thank the guys actually in Limpopo. So I have the really horrible job of being a judge on the Cannabis Cup there. So this is by Blom Events and the Cannabis Cup. So I got a whole bag here full of stuff which I have to sample in a very short time. Thanks, guys. Could have given me a bit longer, but anyway, I'll enjoy it. Anyway, these cups, I'm really excited to see these cups, because one of the things about these guys is that the cannabis has to be grown 100% naturally with no chemicals, no fertilizers. So they really hold the standards high, and I think it's really exciting to see all these cups happening where, you know, for me, it's an amazing experience to have like 18 different strains that I actually have to smell, touch, feel, look at the bud quality, and then obviously report on the effect. And I think it's a really scientific way to approach it. So thank you very much for asking me to be a judge. I will come back to you. Right now, we're going to cross over to Cuban Zulu, who's going to talk about one of my favorite topics. Everyone's focused on growing weed, but can you grow a tomato? Can you grow a cabbage? Well, Kwanda's going to give us a bit of insight into companion plants that work beautifully in harmony with cannabis.
Hello, cannabis community. I'm coming to you live from CannaSphere's Grow Desk. Excuse me. Today, we want to talk about friends to your cannabis. So basically, the whole thing of companion plants is to develop a good ecosystem for your plants, whether it's indoors or outdoors. You're looking to avoid chemical elements in your garden, then companion plants is the way to go. The benefits that companion plants offer, firstly, is defense. Some plants act as pest repellents, while others attract beneficial insects that prey on insects that destroy your crop. Then when it comes to being a repellent, you have plants that repel certain insects with their odor that is unappealing to those harmful insects. Thirdly, nutrients. Certain plants can improve soil quality, while other plants offer drainage properties through their extensive root systems. And lastly, concealment. Attractive and pleasant smelling plants have a way of leading one's eye away from your cannabis. So, attractive, bright colors, and then also great smells. The three companion plants that I've grown several times with my cannabis and that I choose as my top three are marigold, which repels insects and makes other plants repellent as well. Secondly, chamomile, which prevents fungal infections. And lastly, white clover, which is good to release nitrogen. So some plants you plant right next to your cannabis, others you plant them a distance away. And it's just a matter of finding that perfect harmony. Thank you.
Cool. I love the way I go to Druid's Garden. They have like marigolds everywhere, like all around their tunnels and stuff. And apart from it looking impressive, it's fantastic for repellent, So I absolutely agree with that. What's your favorite companion plant?
I actually like marigold a whole lot. Something you must know about marigold is as much as they repel, they also do attract certain pests to come to them as opposed to your cannabis. So a marigold, you want to plant it outside, on the border of where your cannabis is, so that if there's any aphids trying to attack your cannabis, they go for the marigold first.
Yeah, distraction. Love it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Cuban. Have a great day. See you next week. Right, that brings us to the end of our show. We do have a little announcement, don't we, guys? A little. Am I allowed to announce it? Am I allowed? So this is episode 37, and what is the date today? So beginning of June, you are going to find us diversifying away from the interweb onto terrestrial television. We're very excited to announce that from the beginning of next month, we will be coming to you live on DSTV. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Every week we'll be rerunning the show. They'll be running it 3 times. You can put the times of there, Uncle Linda. Where are the times? These are the times. We'll show you these again. So if you don't remember them, don't worry. But so that we're coming live to DSTV across the African continent, which is very, very exciting news for us. Just shows you that cannabis is going mainstream. So tell your friends, tell your auntie, your uncle, your grandfather, and all your posse to tune in case your interweb is not so good, because I know there's interweb issues in this place. Anyway, guys, exciting times ahead. Yeah?
Very exciting. I'm super excited.
Me too. I think it's a real first indication of how mainstream cannabis is becoming, and it's important as part of the destigmatization and just getting the news out there of just how many exciting developments there are going on in tech and farming and health and science. It's really, really interesting.
Completely. Charles was just saying there that they do. Charles was just saying that we're not dealing with the Drugs Trafficking Act, which is also a very valid point. Thanks for that, Charles. Appreciate your input. Yeah. I think that's it, guys. I think it's time up. What do you think? Time to go?
Okay. See you next week.
I think it's time to go.
Right. Have a great day. Don't forget to subscribe. CannaSphere Africa every week, bringing you all the latest, not so greatest news on the cannabis industry in Africa. Till next week, we out. Ciao.